Impossible, muttered Science Officer Ulrichsen, her crystalline exoskeleton flushing turquoise with stress. The readings must be corrupted. Commander Ziktora moved to her station, membranous wings folded tightly against his back. Explain. The gravitational force alone would crush most sentient life forms. Atmospheric composition includes corrosive oxygen at levels that would trigger spontaneous combustion in 23 Concord species. Temperature variations span over 150 standard units from poles to equator. And the biological diversity. She trailed off, mandibles clicking rapidly. Commander, there are over 8 million distinct macroscopic species, many exhibiting extreme predatory characteristics. The bridge of the boundless discovery fell silent as the full implications sank in. They had discovered a genuine Class 15 Deathworld, the most lethal planetary classification in the Concord's 30,000-year history of space exploration. Prepare the documentation drones, Ziktora ordered. Standard xenobiological protocols for extreme hazard worlds. No landing party. He turned toward the view screen displaying the swirling blue-green sphere. This world will make an excellent cautionary exhibit in the Galactic archives. Commander. Navigation Officer Helmach's voice cracked with alarm. Detecting artificial electromagnetic signals. Thousands of them. Ziktora's wings unconsciously extended in a threat display. Verify. Confirmed, sir. Organized communication networks, power distribution grids, transportation systems. Helmach's multifaceted eyes reflected cascading data streams. And orbital objects. Primitive satellites, some containing life forms. Survivors, suggested Security Chief Kraz Thul, his armored carapace shifting to battle-ready formation. Perhaps a crashed colony ship. Stranded explorers. Negative. Helmach responded. Based on signal distribution and infrastructure patterns, we're detecting multiple population centers, billions of individuals. Medical Officer Juris Van triggered her breathing apparatus as stress hormones flooded her system. No transplanted species could achieve that population density in these conditions. The physiological adaptations required would be unprecedented. They're hailing us, announced Communications Officer Trilzex, compound eyes widening in disbelief. Standard Concord approach frequencies. They've decoded our communication protocols from our scan emissions. The bridge crew exchanged alarmed glances. Only advanced civilizations could analyze and respond to Concord signals so quickly. On screen, Ziktora ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. The view screen flickered, and a being appeared that defied every evolutionary principle the commander understood. Its form was alarmingly exposed. No exoskeleton, no protective scales, no redundant organs visible. Its limbs appeared fragile, its sensory organs completely unshielded. It was either an evolutionary impossibility or a deliberately misleading projection. Greetings from Earth, the creature said in flawless Concord standard. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing the United Earth Government. We detected your ship entering our solar system and thought we should welcome you properly. Specialist Venra, the ship's senior xenobiologist, stumbled forward. Impossible. No species could evolve naturally in these conditions without massive structural adaptations. The pink-skinned being smiled, displaying blunt teeth. I assure you we're quite real and evolved right here on Earth. We've been monitoring your scans of our planet. Your technology is impressive, but I should note your environmental assessment contains several errors. Our world isn't nearly as dangerous as your instruments suggest. Ziktora's wings fluttered in agitation. Our readings indicate your atmosphere alone would be toxic to most spacefaring species. Interesting, the human replied, appearing genuinely fascinated. From our perspective, many Concord standard atmospheres would be immediately fatal to us. I suppose it's all a matter of what you evolved to consider normal. She smiled again, the expression sending instinctive danger signals through the commander's nervous system. Perhaps, Dr. Vasquez continued, this is why we've never encountered other intelligent life until now. We've been searching the stars for centuries, hoping to find others like us, never realizing we might be the galactic outliers. Around the bridge, emergency protocols activated automatically as the full implications became clear. The Concorde had discovered something unprecedented. A sentient species that considered a Class 15 Deathworld normal. "We be honored to welcome your delegation to Earth," said Dr. Vasquez. "We can provide appropriate environmental accommodations for your comfort." Ziktora realized with cold certainty that a species that evolved on such a world wouldn't just survive, they would be adaptable beyond comprehension. And they were offering hospitality. "We look forward to establishing diplomatic relations," he managed to reply, as silent emergency signals raced through subspace toward Concorde Command. Commander Ziktora stood before the Concorde Emergency Response Council, his wings vibrating with suppressed tension as he delivered his report. The curved chamber, designed to accommodate representatives of 300 species, had been sealed under threat assessment protocols for the first time in 80 years. "The inhabitants call themselves humans," he explained. "They claim to have evolved naturally on this Class 15 environment. All evidence supports their claim." High Chancellor Vorgzal's exoskeletal plates shifted from diplomatic blue to alarmed orange. "Naturally evolved. That violates core principles of xenobiology. No sentient species could develop without environmental engineering in such extreme conditions. Our analysis suggests otherwise," said Specialist Fenra, stepping forward. The xenobiologist's usually pristine carapace was dulled from stress and lack of proper molting cycles after days of non-stop analysis. "We've studied their transmitted biological data and historical records. These humans have existed on their world for over 300,000 years, with minimal physiological changes." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Fenra displayed a holographic model of human anatomy. "They appear almost deliberately vulnerable. Single-chambered cardiovascular system, no redundant organs, exposed sensory apparatus, minimal dermal protection, yet they've dominated their planet's evolutionary competition. How?" demanded War Minister Krasgul, his battle-scarred exoskeleton radiating skepticism. "What adaptation gives them advantage?" "That's the paradox," Venra replied. "We found no single adaptation. Instead, they possess extraordinary environmental tolerance ranges. They survive atmospheric temperature variations that would kill most species. They consume substances toxic to 90% of Concorde races. They can sustain tissue damage that would be fatal to us, and simply regenerate." The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter as a new transmission from Earth appeared on the central display. A human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair nodded respectfully. "Greetings, Concorde Council. I am Director Amara Osi of Earth's Sinological Institute. We understand our existence raises significant questions. We're prepared to host a diplomatic delegation in environmentally controlled facilities designed for your comfort. We've analyzed your physiological requirements and can accommodate all council representatives." The War Minister's translator clicked anxiously. "They've already analyzed our biological weaknesses." "Minister," Director Osai continued, as if hearing him. "We understand your security concerns. Your species evolved in controlled environments with minimal atmospheric variance. Our world would indeed be lethal to you without protection. But please understand, what you perceive as extreme environmental monitoring is simply basic hospitality from our perspective." The transmission ended, leaving the council in uneasy silence. "They must be warriors beyond comprehension," whispered an aide. "To evolve in such conditions, preliminary combat capability assessment places them as moderate threats individually," noted security analyst Trelvon. "Their physical strength varies but averages below Concorde military standards. However," the analyst's voice faltered, "their environmental adaptability makes conventional threat assessment meaningless. They operate in conditions we classify as lethal." Commander Ziktora addressed the council again. "They've invited a small delegation to their International Space Station. and orbital habitat they consider suitable for first formal contact. Our analysis indicates they've modified one section to replicate standard Concorde atmospheric conditions. A trap, suggested the War Minister. I don't believe so, replied Ziktora. Based on all communication, they seem genuinely interested in peaceful contact. They've been transparent about their world's conditions and understand our physiological limitations. The High Chancellor rose. Prepare a diplomatic team. Maximum security protocols. I want our most experienced synopsicologists and tactical specialists. If these humans evolved on a Class 15 Deathworld and consider it normal, we're dealing with a species unlike any we've encountered. Their psychology, their very perception of threat and safety, must be fundamentally different from our own. As the council adjourned, Specialist Venra approached Commander Ziktora privately. There's something I didn't share with the council, the xenobiologist whispered. The humans sent comprehensive biological data, including their genetic structure. And their DNA shows something remarkable. Adaptability mechanisms built into their very genetic code. Commander, they're not just survivors of a death world. They're designed to thrive in changing conditions. Evolution crafted them for adaptation itself. Ziktora's wings fluttered with unease. What does that mean for us? It means, Venra replied, that we're about to meet a species that considers the impossible to be merely challenging. The Concorde diplomatic shuttle hovered momentarily above the landing pad. Through the viewports, the delegation could see the blue-green curve of Earth below, deceptively beautiful for a world their instruments classified as a biological nightmare. Final environmental checks, announced Commander Lyrvex. Suits at full integrity. Remember, no direct contact with any surface. The landing zone has been prepared to Concorde specifications, but adjacent areas contain lethal conditions. The 6 representatives, encased in sealed environmental suits that resembled walking life support systems, exchanged nervous glances. Each had volunteered despite knowing they were landing on the most hostile inhabited world ever encountered. With a gentle thud, the shuttle touched down. The delegation moved awkwardly toward the airlock, each step deliberate in the cumbersome protective gear designed for deep space emergencies. The outer door slid open, revealing not the expected sterile diplomatic chamber, but an open-air platform overlooking a sprawling city beside an enormous body of water. Mountains rose in the distance under a sky of alarming blue intensity. "Welcome to Vancouver," called a human male, approaching with an outstretched hand. He wore only a light fabric covering over most of his body, leaving head and hands completely exposed to the lethal atmosphere. Behind him stood 5 other humans in similar minimal protection, including one juvenile. "I'm Ambassador Chen. We thought you might appreciate seeing a bit of our world firsthand. Beautiful day, isn't it? Only 24 degrees Celsius with a light breeze." Xenobiologist Venra's translator struggled with the casual statement, finally indicating the human considered deadly heat and atmospheric turbulence beautiful. "The gravity," gasped Security Chief Krasful, his suit compensators straining. "How do you stand it constantly pulling at your bodies?" The human child, a girl of perhaps 10 years, giggled. "It's just normal gravity. How do you live without it? I got so sick during zero-G training last month." Ambassador Chen smiled. "May, remember our briefing about biological differences. The Concorde standard gravity is 0.67 of Earth's." He turned to the delegation. "My daughter is part of our educational cultural exchange program. She had many questions about your visit." The delegation followed their hosts into a building where a reception had been prepared. Inside, horror unfolded as the humans demonstrated their unnatural resilience. They casually consumed substances that the delegation scanners identified as diluted toxins, including a brown liquid containing methylxanthine alkaloids and a transparent fluid that broke down neural inhibitors. "Would you like to try some coffee?" offered a human scientist. "We've analyzed your biology, and about 30% of Concorde species can safely metabolize it. It's how many of us start our mornings. You deliberately consume stimulants daily? Asked Medical Officer Turlvon, her voice wavering through her suit's speakers. Most of us require it to function optimally, the scientist replied cheerfully. Some of us drink 4 or 5 cups daily. The delegation watched in silent horror as a demonstration of Earth activities played on wall-mounted screens. Humans deliberately submersing and crushing oceanic depths, hurling themselves down frozen mountainsides on narrow blades, and climbing vertical rock faces with minimal safety equipment. These are punishments. Ventured diplomatic attaché prison. Ambassador Chen laughed. No, these are recreational activities, hobbies, things we do for fun on weekends. A small furry predator with sharp teeth trotted into the room, causing 3 delegation members to activate emergency defensive protocols. The creature approached the child, who casually stroked its head. This is Max, my dog, the girl explained. He's my best friend. Security Chief Kraz Full, veteran of 3 interspecies conflicts, found himself unable to process a civilization that kept predators as companions for children while consuming daily toxins and seeking out deadly environments for fun. I think, he whispered to Commander Lirvex, we have fundamentally misunderstood what we're dealing with. These aren't just beings who survived a hostile world. They're being shaped by it to consider danger, entertainment. As if confirming his assessment, the human child offered to show the delegation what she called her bug collection, extending a container containing preserved specimens of creatures with enough venom to depopulate a standard Concord habitat. This one lived in our garden, she said proudly, pointing to a black arachnid. Dad says its bite can kill in hours if you don't get treatment. The security chief's translator shut down, unable to process the concept of lethal organisms being collected by children as a hobby. Specialist Venra had not left the research laboratory for 3 full planetary rotations. Colleagues whispered concerns about stress madness as the renowned xenobiologist muttered constantly while reviewing medical scans of the Deathworlders. It doesn't make sense, Venra repeated, compound eyes fixed on the holographic display of human anatomy. Every evolutionary principle contradicted. The lab door hissed open as Commander Ziktor entered. A High Council demands updates. Specialist, have you discovered how they survive their world? Venra's exoskeleton clicked in agitation. Commander, I've analyzed their biology against every known evolutionary model. They should not exist. The hologram rotated to highlight the human skeletal structure. Their bones break under minimal pressure compared to Concord standards. Their skin tears from contact with moderately abrasive surfaces. They have no redundant organs like halaxians, no radiation resistance like Vordi, no cellular regeneration like the Tress. Yet they dominate a planet that should have exterminated them millions of years ago. There must be some explanation, pressed Ziktora. Some adaptation we've overlooked. That's just it, Venra replied, mandibles quivering. I found no single adaptation explaining their survival. Instead, the scientist manipulated the display to show thousands of human genetic markers. They show unprecedented adaptability ranges. They can acclimatize to temperature variations that would kill most species. Their digestive systems can process compounds toxic to 90% of Concord races. They don't thrive because they're stronger. They thrive because they're more flexible. A communication alert interrupted them. Captain Marcus Singh requesting entrance, priority clearance. The human captain who entered appeared alarming even by Deathworlder standards. Taller than most of his species, with dark skin and imposing musculature. Despite environmental protocols, he wore only a thin breathing apparatus rather than a full protection suit. Hope I'm not interrupting, Singh said cheerfully, holding a steaming container. Thought you might want to see our historical archives while you analyze our biology. He casually took a sip from his container, consuming what Venra's scanner identified as a methylxanthine stimulant at concentrations that would cause cardiac arrest in 17 Concord species. Captain, Venra began cautiously, I've been studying your species' physiological adaptations, but I'm struggling to understand how you evolved such resilience without specialized biological structures. Singh smiled. You're looking for the wrong thing, specialist. Our advantage isn't physical, it's psychological. He activated a data transfer, projecting Earth's historical record onto the laboratory screens. Prehistoric humans hunting massive predators with primitive spears, ancient mariners crossing vast oceans in wooden vessels, explorers surviving at environmental extremes with minimal equipment. Early in our development, we made a critical evolutionary choice, Singh explained. Instead of evolving specialized adaptations for specific environments, we develop general adaptability. We don't conquer environments with specialized biology. We overcome them with problem-solving and technology. He pointed to an image of humans in a frozen wasteland. These Arctic explorers survived temperatures that would kill unprotected humans within hours, not because their bodies could withstand the cold naturally, but because they learned to make protective clothing, build insulated shelters, and create heat sources. Venra's scientific mind reeled. You deliberately expose yourselves to conditions beyond your biological tolerances and survive through behavioral adaptation. Exactly, Singh confirmed. When we're too cold, we don't evolve fur. We harvest it from other species. When we can't fly, we build machines that outpace any natural wing. When our world presents limitations, we simply refuse to accept them. The xenobiologist's translator struggled with the concept. How can your species constantly adapt without genetic modification or evolutionary pressure? We call it Tuesday, Singh answered with the alarming facial expression humans term to smile. Now let me show you what we do when things get actually difficult. He activated another file. Humans deliberately entering environments that exceeded their survival parameters simply to test their limits, climbing impossible mountains, diving to crushing depths, exploring deadly caves, all without evolutionary advantage. Your species, Venra whispered in dawning comprehension, didn't evolve to survive your world. You evolved to conquer it. Singh's expression turned serious. That's what you're not understanding, specialist. Earth didn't make us physically superior. It made us refuse to accept defeat, even from nature itself. The Concord Grand Council chamber fell silent as classified footage played on the central display. Humans leaping from aircraft with only fabric canopies to slow their descent, deliberately submerging in crushing oceanic depths, and competing to survive in lethal environments designated as wilderness reality shows. They seek out danger for entertainment, Supreme Counselor Thorvex whispered, chitinous plates fluctuating between alarm orange and fear purple. What kind of psychological aberration is this? The emergency session had stretched into its fourth cycle. Sleep-deprived representatives from 32 primary Concord worlds argued heatedly about how to manage relations with the newly discovered Deathworlders. Military containment is the only logical response, insisted Defense Minister Krulvok. Battle ridges flared in dominance display. Any species that evolved in Class 15 conditions must be considered an existential threat. Their adaptability makes them unpredictable. Short-sighted, countered science delegate Tazran, sensory tentacles pulsing with disagreement. These humans represent evolutionary pathways we've never encountered. The research potential alone. Research, interrupted Trade Commissioner Plentok. We're overlooking the economic implications. A species that operates in environments currently inaccessible to Concord Industries could revolutionize resource extraction on hostile worlds. The argument intensified until Supreme Counselor Thorvex raised all four upper limbs for silence. We will proceed with cautious diplomatic engagement while assessing all security implications. The first human delegation arrives on Harmony tomorrow. They will be closely monitored. Ambassador Layla Kwan stepped from the diplomatic shuttle onto the pristine surface of Harmony, the Concord capital world. Behind her came the 5 other members of Earth's first official delegation, scientists, cultural specialists, and diplomatic corps veterans, all chosen for their adaptability and calm under pressure. "Welcome to Harmony," intoned High Diplomat Jexelin, maintaining a precisely calculated distance. "We have prepared accommodations meeting your biological requirements." "Thank you for your hospitality," Quan replied warmly. "We look forward to establishing positive relations between Earth and the Concord." The delegation was escorted to a sealed residential complex specifically engineered for their extreme physiological needs. The humans exchanged amused glances at the over-engineered facility, temperature controls capable of maintaining stability within 0.1 degrees, atmospheric processors ensuring perfectly consistent composition, and radiation shielding sufficient for proximity to a neutron star. "They really think we'll break if the temperature changes by a degree," whispered Dr. Okafor, the delegation's physician. Hours later, disaster struck. An engineering malfunction caused critical systems failure throughout the diplomatic quarter. Emergency teams rushed to evacuate what they assumed would be dying humans, only to find the delegates calmly playing card games in the failing habitat. Several had removed outer garments and wrapped themselves in light coverings they called blankets. "Is everything all right?" asked a frantic Concord emergency coordinator, bursting through the door in full hazard gear. "Life support has failed. The temperature has dropped 8 degrees and atmospheric pressure has fluctuated by 3%. Ambassador Quan looked puzzled. "Yes, we noticed it got a bit chilly. We thought you'd want to fix it before bedtime. But it's really no emergency. This is actually like camping in early autumn back home." The emergency coordinator's translator struggled to process the concept that conditions requiring emergency evacuation protocols were compared to recreational camping. Later that night, in a secured command center, Intelligence Director Vaxmore reviewed the incident footage with growing concern. "They didn't even register it as a threat," he noted. "Temperature variations that would trigger hypothermic shock in 17 Concord species, and they called it a bit chilly. The implications are unsettling," observed High Commander Zekvan. "If environmental extremes we consider life-threatening are merely inconveniences to them, how do they define actual danger?" "More concerning," replied Vaxmore, "is what this reveals about their psychology. They experience potentially lethal conditions and respond with calm adaptation rather than fear." The commander's exoskeleton clicked in decision. "Upgrade surveillance protocol DEATHHOLKERST to priority status. I want comprehensive psychological profiles. If these humans can maintain cognitive function under conditions we classify as survival emergencies, we need to understand how they perceive actual threats." On the other side of the diplomatic complex, Ambassador Quan gazed through her window at the meticulously engineered perfection of Harmony. A world without storms, without temperature variation, without environmental challenge of any kind. "They've forgotten what it means to adapt," she whispered to herself. "They've engineered away the very pressures that forged humanity." Emergency alerts pulsed across Concord networks as reports flooded in from the Talasian colony. The planet's weather control system, operational for 3 centuries without incident, had catastrophically malfunctioned, creating conditions previously unknown on the carefully engineered world. "Status update," demanded Supreme Counselor Sorvex, joining the crisis communication from Harmony. "Critical failure in primary and secondary environmental regulators," reported Governor Pelvax, voice distorted by interference. "Temperature fluctuations of 15 degrees Celsius occurring randomly across habitable zones. Atmospheric pressure destabilized. And the transmission wavered. Precipitation of dihydrogen monoxide in both liquid and crystalline forms." The command center fell silent. Such environmental variations exceeded emergency training parameters for most Concord species. "Casualties?" the counselor asked grimly. 43 confirmed, thousands requiring medical intervention for environmental shock. The colony's 400,000 inhabitants face extinction without immediate evacuation. "Deploy rescue fleet," ordered the counselor. "Impossible," came the response from Fleet Commander Trislar. "Atmospheric turbulence exceeds safe landing parameters for standard vessels. We've lost 2 shuttles already attempting emergency medical drops. The crisis stretched into its 3rd cycle. Evacuation efforts collapsed as panicked colonists overwhelmed distribution centers. Concord emergency protocols, designed for orderly response in controlled environments, proved catastrophically inadequate against actual environmental extremes. In desperation, the Council authorized an unprecedented request, asking the newly contacted Deathworlders for assistance. Commander Lynn Okafor of Earth Emergency Services stepped from her shuttle into howling winds and freezing rain. Around her, 20 specialized disaster response teams deployed with practiced efficiency. The veteran rescue specialist had responded to earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions across Earth, but this was her first extraplanetary mission. Status, she demanded through her comm unit. Talesian emergency shelters failing under snow accumulation, reported her second in command. Local infrastructure wasn't designed for precipitation or temperature variation. Their materials are literally cracking under cold exposure. Okafor observed the Concord officials staring at her team in obvious disbelief. Several wore environmental suits that made Earth's deep-sea diving equipment look minimalist by comparison. Yet they remained inside their heavily shielded command center, while her team moved freely through conditions the aliens clearly considered unsurvivable. Your people can survive indoors for weeks if we get basic heat and water services running, she explained to the colony governor, who watched from behind a triply reinforced viewport. We'll establish ground transport corridors to evacuation zones using modified Earth alpine rescue protocols. The governor's translator struggled to process her calm assessment. Our environmental scientists predict conditions might worsen before stabilizing. Perhaps you should wait. We prepared for that, Okafor interrupted. This is basically just a Category 3 situation by Earth standards. We train for 5s. She turned to her team. Deploy the mobile heating units to primary shelters first. Medical teams paired with engineering crews, standard Antarctic protocol. Let's move. Within hours, human rescue teams traversed conditions that Concord emergency responders considered fatal. They carried stranded Talesian children through snowstorms, worked atop structures in high winds, and constructed temporary shelters using locally available materials. Most shocking to the watching Concord officials was the humans' casual adaptation. Several removed outer layers of clothing as they worked, explaining they were getting too warm from the physical activity. One rescue specialist was filmed carrying 6 Talesian infants through a blizzard after their nursery dome lost power. When asked about the extreme danger afterward, she looked confused. It was just some snow and wind. Nothing compared to the avalanche season I worked in Nepal. By the crisis's 4th cycle, footage of human rescue efforts dominated Concord media networks. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Deathworlders stabilized conditions the Concord had deemed catastrophic. They're not even using advanced technology, marveled Science Minister Lethven, observing the rescue operation. They're succeeding with portable equipment and adaptive problem-solving. In the central command post, Commander Okafor received new weather projections from her team's meteorologists. Temperatures dropping another 10 degrees overnight, she noted calmly. Deploy the Arctic-rated emergency shelters and shift to cold weather protocols. When informed that many Talesians were experiencing psychological shock from the environmental variations, she nodded understanding. Cultural orientation teams should explain that these conditions are temporary. We'll integrate counselors into each rescue unit. The Talesian governor, watching the human commander confidently direct operations in conditions his species considered unsurvivable, finally understood what it meant to evolve on a Deathworld. Not just physical endurance, but the psychological foundation to treat survival challenges as merely technical problems to be solved. The galactic landscape transformed in the months following the Talesian rescue. Earth's diplomatic stations across Concord space found themselves inundated with formal requests. 27 worlds seeking human expertise in environmental adaptation and emergency response. In the Himalayan mountain range, Earth's newly established Concord Adaptation Academy welcomed its first non-human students. Despite exorbitant costs and required medical waivers, the waitlist stretched years. "Welcome to Environmental Adaptation Fundamentals," announced Dr. Rajiv Patel to the 12 alien representatives seated before him, each in carefully modified environments that maintained their biological requirements while exposing them to mild, by human standards, variations. This facility recreates controlled versions of Earth conditions. Over the next 60 days, you'll experience what humans consider normal environmental fluctuations while learning adaptive psychological and technological approaches. A Vexillian architect named Cholera raised a delicate appendage. Is it true that humans regularly survive conditions that exceed their biological parameters? Our evolutionary science considers this impossible. Not only survive, but thrive, Patel confirmed. Today we'll start with temperature adaptation. You'll experience a 5-degree variation, approximately 1/3 of what average humans tolerate daily. Nervous murmurs rippled through the class. For most, a 5-degree shift exceeded emergency training scenarios. The critical lesson isn't about physical endurance, Patel continued. It's about adaptive mindset. Humans don't succeed because our bodies are tougher. They aren't. We succeed because we refuse to accept environmental limitations. Meanwhile, on human educational networks, schools incorporated comparative xenobiology, showing how Earth's conditions, which children considered unremarkable, shaped humanity into something unprecedented. At Singapore Preparatory School, 12-year-old Min Jung stared in fascination at holographic comparisons of human adaptation capabilities versus other sentient species. The Vordae evolved in environments with temperature variations of only 2 degrees, explained her teacher. Their civilization developed in perfect environmental stability. By comparison, Singapore experiences annual variations of 15 degrees, with daily fluctuations of 8 to 10. But that's just normal weather, Min protested. Exactly, smiled the teacher. What we consider ordinary would trigger survival emergencies for 80% of known spacefaring species. In the prestigious Journal of Xenobiology, Dr. Amara Okonkwo's thesis, "The Crucible Species, Humanity's Deathworld Legacy," became the most translated human work in galactic history. What we perceived as normal planetary challenges, she wrote, were in fact evolutionary pressures of unparalleled intensity. Earth didn't just shape our bodies, it forged our problem-solving approach. While other species evolved to fit specific environmental niches, we evolved to master all niches through adaptive intelligence. The thesis recontextualized human history, every civilization-defining achievement, from fire and agriculture to space travel, reflected a species that refused to accept natural limitations. On the Concord Grand Assembly floor, heated debate continued about humanity's proper role in galactic affairs. The Talesian delegate rose to address the chamber. Before the crisis, I believe humans represented a dangerous evolutionary outlier, he admitted. Now I understand we've been approaching evolution backwards. We engineered our environments to require minimal adaptation. Humans accepted adaptation as inevitable and developed accordingly. He gestured to Ambassador Jackson, Earth's representative. I once feared the Deathworlders. Now I understand they're not dangerous because they're aggressive. They're remarkable because they're resilient. Ambassador Jackson stepped to the podium as the chamber fell silent. For generations, humanity dreamed of finding others among the stars, never realizing we might be the galactic outliers. We assumed all life would face challenges like ours. We never considered that what forged our species might be unique. He paused, surveying the representatives of 300 worlds engineered for stability and comfort. We come to you not as the weakest species physically, but as the strongest adaptively. What you call a Class 15 Deathworld, we call the mother who shaped us. Earth didn't make us because we're stronger or faster. She made us because we refuse to be limited by our environment. And that, he concluded, may be the greatest evolutionary advantage of all. The chamber erupted in discussion as species that had evolved in carefully controlled environments confronted a fundamental question. Had their pursuit of environmental perfection cost them the very adaptability that humanity possessed? Had their ancestors' engineering of environmental stability inadvertently engineered away their capacity to face the unknown? 5 years after first contact, the galaxy had transformed. Human-designed environmental adaptation systems allowed Concord species to explore worlds previously deemed inaccessible. Earth-trained crisis response teams operated throughout Concord space. The term Deathworlder approach entered common usage, describing creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. On the frontier outpost of Monitoring Station Delta 9, Lieutenant Commander Vierzeks of Concord Defense Systems detected an anomaly at the edge of charted space. "Multiple vessels approaching," she reported. "Configuration unknown. Not matching any Concord registry." Within hours, the Concord Defense Council convened an emergency session. Long-range sensors confirmed the approaching fleet's trajectory and composition. Nearly 300 warships of advanced design. First contact protocols, suggested Diplomatic Minister Jexkow. Negative, responded Intelligence Director Trazven. "We've intercepted their internal communications. This is the Krasek Dominion, a previously unknown multi-species empire. They're not exploring. They are invading." The intelligence briefing painted a grim picture. The Dominion had already catalogued Concord border worlds and analyzed their defenses. Most concerning was their tactical assessment. These Concord species evolved in protected environments with minimal selection pressure. Their physical and psychological frailty will make conquest efficient. "They believe us weak because our worlds are stable," realized Supreme Counselor Torvex. "They expect species who panic at environmental fluctuations." "Deploy the Adaptive Response Fleet," ordered Fleet Admiral Karazul, "and contact Earth immediately." The Krasek Dominion launched its first strike against what their intelligence indicated was a minimally defended agricultural world, unaware it now housed Earth's first extraplanetary settlement, New Montana. From the Concord Defense Command Center, Commander Ziktora, now Earth's liaison to the Concord military, watched tactical displays with growing amazement. The Dominion expected to face panicking colonists retreating from combat conditions. Instead, they encountered farmers, construction workers, and settlers who immediately organized resistance using equipment repurposed from terraforming operations. "They're using agricultural machinery as mobile artillery platforms," gasped a Concord tactical officer. "And they've converted atmospheric processors into area denial weapons." When Dominion forces deployed biological agents designed to incapacitate standard Concord physiology, the human colonists simply adapted filtration systems from their farming equipment and continued fighting. When the invaders cut power to human habitats, expecting to create life-threatening conditions, the colonists treated it as a minor inconvenience. Many continuing operations through nightfall and terrain and weather conditions, the invaders themselves found challenging. "They're not even primarily military personnel," Ziktora explained to the astonished council. "This is how humans respond to threats. They adapt." 3 days later, the Dominion fleet retreated from the system, having lost 27 vessels to what their commanders described as incomprehensible resistance from minimally armed colonists. The captured Dominion commander stood before the Concord Assembly, his armored exoskeleton bearing scorch marks from the battle. "How?" he demanded. "Our intelligence indicated your species require perfect environmental conditions. Yet these colonists continued fighting in conditions that should ensure their biological collapse." Ambassador Chen, representing Earth, stepped forward. "You encountered humans from Earth, a Class 15 Deathworld. What you call extreme conditions, we call Tuesday." The commander's translator struggled with the concept. "Your species evolved on a Deathworld. Impossible. No intelligent species called." "And yet, here we stand," Chen interrupted. "Your mistake was assuming biological fragility equals civilizational weakness. Humans don't survive because our bodies are tougher. We survive because we refuse to accept defeat, even from the universe itself. In the Grand Archives of the Concord, a new exhibit opened featuring a holographic display of Earth's swirling blue-green surface. Crowds gathered daily, gazing in wonder at what had once been classified as the most hostile life-bearing planet in known space. Beside the display stood a simple plaque, Class 15 Deathworld, first categorized as the most dangerous habitable planet in known space, now recognized as the crucible that forged humanity, the species that taught the galaxy how to thrive in adversity. Beyond the display, through floor-to-ceiling windows, visitors could observe the transformed landscape of Harmony. The once perfectly regulated capital world now featured carefully managed environmental variation zones, where Concord species practiced adaptation under controlled conditions. The greatest lesson of Earth, read the final line of the exhibit, was not that some species can survive extreme conditions, but that embracing adaptation rather than fearing change creates resilience no enemy can overcome. In the observatory above, Commander Ziktora, who had first discovered the impossible inhabitants of a Class 15 Deathworld, watched as Concord children played in a light rainfall, laughing as they experienced weather for the first time in their civilization's history.